very privileged to us to host Professor Paragama Sen from University of Calcutta for today's physics colloquium. And she received her PhD degree from Saha Institute of Nuclear Physics, Kolkata in 1983. And presently she is professor in the physics department of University of Calcutta. She was regular associates of IMSC and ICTP. She was also awarded APS IU SSTF professorship for period 2012-2013. And her research interests include various fields in statistical physics, like phase transition and critical phenomena in magnetic system, network, quantum system, percolation, and many other fields. And she is also interested in dynamical phenomena in complex physical and social systems. And today he will be delivering a colloquium on quantum walks in one dimension, randomness, memory, and a few surprises. So with this, I hand over the forum to Professor Sen and invite him to deliver today's physics colloquium.
Thank you very much. I think the audience has a right to see my face. So hello everyone, and thank you very much for this kind invitation. So with that, I will just shut off the camera, and then I will start my presentation. So I have been to IIT Guwahati many times, and I've always enjoyed my visits there. But this time, of course, just a moment. I think my presentation is not visible for some reason. Just a moment. Yeah. Yeah, can you see the presentation?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Okay. So actually, this is a field in which I have not been working for a very long time. And actually, I started at around, say, 2010, but then I stopped working on it, and then again came back to this after a gap of few years. So you have seen the title of the talk, and this talk is basically based on 3 recent publications. And I also mentioned here some previous works on quantum walk. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that in these works I had mentioned only quantum walk, etc. But here we had quantum random walk written here because we had some kind of actually it's not my problem. It was a universal thing. It was called quantum random walk initially, but actually it is not random. And that is what I'm going to highlight today, that how randomness can be introduced here and what are the consequences. Let me present it in the school screen. Okay, so first let me introduce the topic, the topic of quantum walks, which may not be very familiar to all of you. Of course, classical walks are very familiar to everyone, to any student also, but it is always good to start from the classical walk and then move over to the quantum walk, etc. So let me go very quickly through the classical walk. Classical walk in one dimension is simply a displacement x at t plus 1. We are taking discrete time as well as discrete space. So xt plus 1 is equal to xt plus xi t, and xi t's are independently and identically distributed random variables. And the probability that the walker is at a position at x at time t is given by a well-known Gaussian function. In the simple random walk, we'll take these xi's to be equal to plus minus 1 with equal probability. And essentially, this walk can be realized by the tossing of a coin. So you can say that the convention may be like if you toss the coin, and if you get a head, then you go to the right. If it is a tail, you go to the left, and so on. So this is a very simple scenario. Everyone knows it, and it has only 1 degree of freedom. We are doing things in 1 dimension right now. So what is a quantum walk? The quantum walk, first of all, has an additional coin degree of freedom, which is also called chirality. And simply stated, one can say that instead of measuring the coin state after a toss, a superposition of states with head and tails is allowed. So actually you do not measure the state, because wherever you measure, you know, in a quantum mechanical system, the thing will collapse to that state. So you do not do the measurement. You only assume that it can be in both states with some probability. Those things will be clear as I go progress through the talk. So essentially the flipping of the coin, which was done in the classical walk, is now replaced by a unitary transformation on the coin state. And the coin state then dictates the translation. The full time evolution is therefore determined by two factors. One is the rotation, which is represented by the unitary transformation, and then followed by a translation. So in this slide, I will have some technical things written down, but they are very simple, stated in a very simple manner. So if we consider the discrete quantum walk in one dimension, the state of the walker is expressed in this space. So in this basis, you see that these are nothing but the integers. X's are integers in position space. They denote the position of the walker, and this D denotes the coin state. So D has actually only two states, which is either L or R. So these are the two states which form the basis of D. And X, for X, we have from minus infinity to plus infinity in integers, in steps of 1. Hello, yes? Is there any question?
No, please go ahead.
Okay. If you want to ask any question, please you can interrupt me, not a problem. Yeah, so the state of the particle, this can be written down as consisting of two components. One is psi L xt and psi R xt. So at any position x, we have two quantities associated with the so-called wave function. One has left chirality and the other one has right chirality. So you can be reminded of, say, qubits, in which you have similar kind of two states, a mixed state and so on, something similar to that. And here now we come to some details that if one can use many types of unitary transformations, and here we have restricted ourselves to the Hadamard coin. The Hadamard coin looks like this. It's a very simple matrix, 2 by 2 matrix acting on this D, and therefore in particular, if it acts on R, then it gives us this state, and if it acts as L, then it gives us this state. On the other hand, the translation is, as I told you, dictated by the coin state. So if you are at the position X and you have left chirality, then the translation is going to take to you to this new position X minus L. And if you have right chirality, then the translation takes you to X plus L, X plus L into this R. So this total thing is now written as a unitary operator, which is equal to the translation operator into the coin operator. And if you perform this many times, then you can easily see that this ut is nothing but u to the power t. It can be expressed in this manner. And in the conventional quantum work, this L is a constant. It can be 1, 2, it doesn't matter. It just introduces a scale. So one usually takes it as 1. As I told you, that units of 1. In steps of 1, you can have the positions. And the occupation probability at site x at time t is given by this function f of xt, which is simply equal to mod psi l square and mod psi r square. And obviously the total probability, if you sum over all positions, then it should give you 1. That ensures normalization of the wave function. So let us now look at the time evolution. Now, suppose the walker starts at the origin with right chirality at say t equal to 0. The initial state is therefore 0. This means it is at the origin, and R is the right chirality. Now the Hadamard coin is operated, and then the new coin state becomes a superposition of this R and L. And therefore the translation will be towards the right and left simultaneously, because now there are two states, and the walker will go either to -1 or +1. The left chirality part will go to the left to -1, and the right chirality part will go to +1. So the states at t equal to 1 can be written like this in our convention. It is 1 by root 2 into these things. This 1 by root 2, of course, assures the normalization. So in the next step, what happens? After every translation, we do the coin operation. So from we have two positions now on which we have to operate the coin. So if we do it at x equal to -1, we should get translations to the position 0 and -2. And the states will be these two. Because if you just operate on L, you get a -L and a +R. So these are the two states. Similarly, from x equal to 1, the evolved states look like this. The positions will be 2 and 0 to the left and right. Hence, at t equal to 2, the states will be like this. So this highlighted one is written in red because you see that the 0 gets contribution from left and right. So therefore, it is a combination of the right chirality state and the left chirality states. And if you compute the probability, then they are 1/4, half, and 1/4, that x equal to -2, 0, and 2 respectively. So up to this, you may think that this is the usual thing which happens in classical box also. But the unusual thing that occurs will happen in the intermediate states. So if I now take a subsequent time, so look at this picture. So suppose this is a t-1 state and it is the t state. And I'm trying to find out what will be the state at the site I. So the contribution to I will come from the two states I-1 and I+1. And the states, the chiral states at I-1 and I+1 are written like this. So essentially what we are doing, we are expressing the chiral states in terms of as a superposition of R and L with the coefficients which are undergoing the time evolution. Okay. So if you just follow the Hadamard-Cohen operation, then essentially what you get is AIT and BITs will be related to these AI and BI in the previous time step. So they appear like this. So what is important to see that at a subsequent step, it may happen that this BI may become 0 because of this minus sign. If these two are same, it may become 0. Or it may become enhanced, like AIT, both are positive, then it gets enhanced, and so on. So this is what we call the interference effect. So unlike the classical Walker, what we have here, which is new or unusual, is the constructive or destructive interference effects. And these effects are less close to the edges because obviously there will be less interference. And as the closer to you go towards the center of the top of the walk, which means closer to 0 in this case, to the origin, these interference effects will be stronger. So if you now again make a comparison of a classical random walk and a quantum random walk, then as I told you, up to say time step 1 or 2 or 3, there is no difference. Even up to 4, there is no difference. But you see in the last 2 steps, I have written down the numbers which are different in different colors. So these are proportional to the probabilities. For normalization, you have to divide by 2 to the power the time step. So this is actually 0 and this is t equal to 5. You have to divide by t equal to 5. The total number will turn out to be 32. And now you can see the difference. So at this time step, you see that as usual in the classical walk, you will have a Gaussian distribution. So the it will be strongest at the origin. So it is 6. Here it is stronger close to the origin. Of course, there is an odd even effect. But here you see that at this time step, it has already deviated from the origin quite a lot. So it is 4 here, but you see it is more populated close to the edges. So these differences gives rise to the scaling behavior. For a classical walk, we know it is Gaussian, so the average is equal to 0 and the variance is proportional to t. But for a quantum walk, which is new, is that this variance is proportional to t square. So the quantum walker is much faster compared to the classical walk. So this is the first thing. Yes.
Yeah. So this kind of elastic behavior we also get when we add the randomness, right? In Brownian motion also for short time the behavior is t square.
For Brownian motion, you don't get non-Gaussian ballistic motion. Only if you impose certain condition, of course you can get. But if you look at the simple unbiased walk, then it is like this. Even for the biased walk, you see this will be proportional to t. For the biased walk, this will be non-zero, but this variance will still be proportional to t. Okay.
Okay. No, I was just thinking about this quantum walk. Can we relate with the random walk? And when we add the randomness to the system, then for short time we get this kind of elastic behavior.
See, those are the issues I'm going to address very soon. Okay. So if there is randomness, what will happen for the quantum walk also? For the classical walk, it is always like this. Classical walk is already random. Classical walk, the randomness is built in. What I'm showing you is the ensemble averages. But for a quantum walk, there is no randomness. It is deterministic. Once you fix a initial step, then the walk will be deterministic. So that is why the random word is not actually applicable for the quantum walk as it is defined in this manner. May I proceed?
I have a small question.
Yes, please.
So you have 2 degrees of freedom in the sense that you have a +1 and -1, and you have this product state, right?
Right, direct product state.
Direct product state. So is there a possibility of writing an entangled state?
I will come to that. I will come to that. See, initially it is not entangled, but as the time evolution takes place, then entanglement will take place. Okay.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I'll come to that. Thank you. So let us look at the probability profile in a quantum walk. It typically looks like this. You have some 2 ballistic peaks occurring in those 2 points, and they are basically occurring at ± very close to ± t by √2, and the total range is proportional to t, so r by t is proportional to √2. So this is a symmetric walk. It all depends on what are the values of A and B, and depending on that, your walk will evolve. So you can also have an asymmetric walk in which is shown in blue. For this, you see that this ballistic peak is much smaller than this one, but essentially the result that close to 0, there will be it will be depleted. That is obtained in both walks. Okay, sorry. So as I told you, constructive and destructive interferences are responsible for this. And why this depletion here? You can see that at one point or the other, there will be some destructive interference. And once it is a destructive interference, that information or the effect of that will carry on. So even when you do the time evolution, the depletion will stay. That is the reason you can say that constructive interference is also occurring. So why do I get a depletion? The reason is that once you get a destructive interference, it is going to stay. That effect will be there. So for good reviews, this is a good review, but slightly dated. And this is the first paper which was published, although there is some history even before that. The discrete walk, I'll go through this slide a little bit quickly because this is not very relevant for the rest of the talk. It is actually an old problem. And if you look at Dirac equation, and if you try to discretize it in 1 + 1 dimension, then it can be solved by a technique. And that technique is called Feynman's checkerboard model using this. And then basically what happens is that you form a 1 + 1 dimensional space, which is actually one time and one space, and then you obtain the solution in terms of counting lattice paths, and these paths are nothing but quantum, the paths which are in this random should not be there, sorry, which are equivalent to quantum walks. Okay, so this generalization IPHC, I'm still using some slides from my old talk, so this R remains, so this should be quantum walk. This has been developed over, say, the last 25 years. And also many experiments have been performed with, say, cold atoms, ions, and photons, etc. And so this topic is gaining importance, and I think there is opportunity to do a lot of work. And important applications, among them is something very interesting. That is, you can gain some insight in biological phenomena like photosynthesis, how the solar energy is getting transported in the network of the chlorophylls. So I'm not going into the details, as I said. But quantum walks is also useful for searching and solving problems. As the walk is faster, then searching is more efficient. And computational problems can be formulated in terms of decision trees. So what you have to do is you have to reach a correct solution which lies at the leaves. And the quantum walks can be used for doing those things. Quantum computation can also be done. A quantum circuit can be implemented by a quantum walk. And lastly, this is also very important, that quantum walks display rich topological phenomena. And these are quite, I would say, mathematically, they are quite challenging and important also. So if you want, this is a good review for this topological thing and so on. And there are more recent things also. But in this particular talk, I'm not going to look at these issues, but rather very, very simple issues. And basically, we would like to probe certain things and at a very, as I told you, as a basic level, and try to explore more and more differences between the classical and quantum work at a very theoretical level. And there will be no mathematical complicated mathematical equations or anything. Mostly they are numerically done. No jargon will be used. So because I don't understand even those advanced topics, and I have kept things at a simple level, and I'm hopeful that all of you would be able to follow me. So as I told you, now suppose you take the case of disorder or randomness in the quantum work. So far, whatever we discussed did not have any disorder or randomness. But you see that noise is an inevitable factor in experiments, and one needs to consider this disorder in quantum works. So what happens, as somebody pointed out, that usually disorder will do what? It will slow down the walk, and in most cases there will be a transition to a classical diffusive walk, or in other words, there will be localization. As you see that at the origin, the quantum walk was depleted and it was spreading towards the and like ballistically, and therefore it was non-localized, so to say. But now there will be localization. So these are some experimental results where you can see that localization may occur in two ways. So ultimately, you can either have a Gaussian distribution or you can have an exponential distribution. This is like what happens in Anderson localization. So in any case, what you get, these are the figures. What you get, experimentally, are some distributions which are localized at the origin, and they are very different from the one which you get for a quantum walk, which has not which does not have any randomness. It is very difficult to generate these walks in the laboratory without randomness. So whatever experimental results are there are done for a few time steps. So initially there was only 5, 3 or 6 time steps. Now I think that using better equipments and all, people have been able to do generate quantum walks without randomness up to 20 odd time steps. In any case, what I want to emphasize is that in most cases, this disorder or decoherence is also incorporated. See, initially it was completely coherent, and decoherence is also a kind of disorder. So decoherence and disorder, both these terms are used, although of course they have difference in meaning, but the effect of both are same, that it brings in a localization. And these things previously have been studied mainly through the Cohen operator, but some stochasticity in position space has also been considered, for example, by breaking links. So in the network in which the walker is moving, you can break some links so that there is some randomness produced in the position space. So what we did, so these are some references, forget it. So what we did, we considered a new scenario. We considered the question that what if the step lengths are varied randomly at different discrete times. So you remember that in our translation, that how did we define the translation? The translation operator operating on a state with left chirality takes it to x minus some L, and for this it's x plus L. Now what we do is we make this L time dependent, so that this translation operator also has a time dependence in it. So essentially the total operator is still unitary at any time t, but they are not the same at every time. So you cannot express the total evolution as a power in u, which you could do previously. Okay, but still obviously it is a product of many unitary operators, so the total remains unitary still. And we have used an asymmetric initial condition to check how symmetry properties are affected in this case. So the first problem which we considered is like this. We considered only the 2 time steps. So, sorry, lengths for the steps. So they are taken to be 1 and 2 to the power n. So if n is equal to 0, we get back the usual quantum walk. But of course here we have used a different n. Okay. So what happens, we use a probability distribution for the step length. So it can take value 1 and 2 to the power n, as I mentioned, with a probability which is 1 alpha for L equal to 1 and 1 minus alpha for the other step length. And obviously, if you make alpha equal to 0 or 1, you will get the usual results, because if you take alpha equal to say 0, then you have only time step 2 to the power n, which introduces a time scale factor. And if you have alpha equal to 1, it is just 1, which is the conventional quantum walk. And we also use this terminology that the maximum is 2 to the power n, we call L max. So here I have shown you 3 figures, 3 plots. Here you see that, okay, so 3 plots in which I have varied alpha, and for this red one it is L max equal to 1, so therefore obviously this is n equal to 0 here. So here we have this depletion and this ballistic peaks. It is plotted at a very large time, so you cannot see the oscillations, but they are there. But the moment you make alpha different from 0 or 1, for example, here you see that for this blue curve, alpha is very close to 1, it is 0.995, but you can see that it looks very different from what you have for this usual quantum walk. So similarly for alpha equal to 0.5, where the range has increased, but basically the behavior is same. You have a localized peak at 0, and there are 2 ballistic peaks occurring at large times, large x values, negative and positive. So here what we have done, we have actually plotted the same figure for a fixed value of alpha and for 4 different time steps, and tried to obtain a scaling behavior. So what we did first was we used this gamma equal to alpha gamma equal to 0.5 and scaled the x value by t to the power gamma and plotted f of xt t to the power gamma. This is the probability. And then we noticed that this central part is nicely collapsed while the ballistic peaks are not. On the other hand, when we scale it by choosing a gamma equal to 1, then we can see that the ballistic peaks are getting collapsed, but the central part is not. And this happens, I am showing you only for alpha equal to 0.5, but this happens for alpha even very, very close to 1 or 0, and the same behavior is found, which by that I mean that this gamma is not dependent on the value of the particular value of alpha we choose. So this is of course one surprise, and we'll be facing many surprises later on. And then what we are going to do is we are going to approximate this probability density function by an empirical form. So you can see that there are essentially 3 peaks. So there is one peak here, which is of course broad, but these 2 peaks are very narrow. So what we do is we approximate the behavior by 3 delta functions. So here is what we do. We approximate the behavior by 3 delta functions, as I told you. So 2 occur at some x minus ct. Ct is just for convention. It is not the velocity of light. And the other one occurring at 0. And because they are obeying different scaling behavior, I have a root 2 here and a t here, 1 by t here, because I need to use the proper scaling variable here. So these things I am just guided by what I am getting from the numerical results. So if I now calculate what is x and x square, then we find that this x looks like this, and this m mod x square, this expectation value of x square looks like this. See, this b2 and b4 have been highlighted in red. It is because you can see that if b2 and b4 are 0, then you get the usual behavior. For asymmetric walk, you have x equal proportional to t and x square proportional to t square. And here what I have done, I have just plotted the moments from the actual distributions, and I have tried to fit with these functions, and I find a very nice fit, and I can therefore estimate the values of b1, b2, b3 and b4 by fitting these things. So I have here 2 cases. One is L equal to 1 or 2. The other one is L equal to 1 or 8. So here n is equal to 3. So it doesn't really depend on the value of n either. So asymptotically I get this. And asymptotically I get this, because asymptotically what will happen, this b1 and b3 can be neglected in comparison to this root 2 and root 2 here, and we get a completely new scaling behavior now. So we can forget about this one. This is not very important. For a symmetric walk it will become 0, but you can see for the asymmetric walk For the second moment, it has a completely different scaling behavior, t to the power 3 by 2. Neither t nor t square for the usual classical or quantum walk, but something in between. So now we want to plot these so-called decoherence parameters B2 and B4, which arise only because I have introduced this long step lengths. And when we plot those two, we expect that B2 and B4 should go to 0 at alpha equal to 0 and 1. Because at alpha equal to 0 and 1, we should get back our usual quantum walk. So actually we note that it is of course like that. And interestingly, these two, they vanish in a power law manner near alpha equal to 1 and 0 with an exponent very close to 0.5. We don't really know why this is happening so, because most of the results are numerical, as I told you. But I will just report the results and we'll do some, we'll have some discussions later on. Okay. So next question that we asked, that suppose we still have long range steps, this I call model B, but they do not occur in a random way. What do I mean by that? Suppose we take the step lengths in a periodic manner, say 1, 2, 1, 2, and so on. So it is not randomly 1 and 2, but it is in a systematic way. So it is 1, 2, 1, 2. So there is no randomness. See, in our problem, we have two things. One is we have introduced long range steps, and secondly, we have introduced a randomness. Now, suppose I suppress one and try to see what happens to the scaling behavior. Immediately, I notice that when this randomness is absent, we get back the same behavior as in a usual quantum walk, that is x square is proportional to t square. So these are the figures for the second moment, which now behave nicely as t square. Of course, the probability density differs. It now appears as a superimposition of two walks with two different step lengths. For example, if you look at 1 and 2, that is the blue one, you can think of two different quantum walks which are taking place here. One is with step length 1 and the other one is step length 2. But the general feature that there will be depletion at the origin is still there. The larger I use the other step length, for example, if I have 1 and 8, then I will have more and more peaks occurring here. In any case, the main conclusion from here is that the randomness is playing the key role in altering the scaling behavior and not the larger step lengths. We will get back to this behavior or this result again when we deal with the persistent quantum walk problem. So the next problem, I will go through a little bit quickly through this because I don't think I'll get time. And essentially what we have done, we have now generalized the problem. Generalize the problem in the sense that we now have many step lengths in steps of 1 and they have a distribution. So I choose the step lengths from a distribution which is a power law distribution, and I have a truncation because numerically I have to have a truncation which I do at Lmax, and now I have another parameter associated with the power law distribution. You may please ask me some questions because if the audience is completely silent and I can't see them, then I don't know whether really people are following things. So is everything okay till now? The first problem, is any question on that? Is there any question? No? Okay.
Go ahead, we'll ask later.
Thank you. Okay. So for some technical reasons, in the numerical evolution of the this walk, then we have to restrict to smaller values of delta if we have a large Lmax in order the power law behavior is correctly taken in the simulation. And so our parameter range 2 we have already used 1, and if we use Lmax equal to 2, that is the same problem which we dealt with in last time. But so we now have our parameter range like this. Lmax ranges from 4 to 12 and delta ranges from 0 to 9.5. And the maximum value is of course for a smaller value of Lmax. So we just carry on the same calculations here and find out the moments. And we see that the main important result is the asymptotically x square expectation value for x square is still t to the power 3 by 2, and this is true for all delta values, even very large, and all values of Lmax. So we find this universal behavior, which I think is quite interesting. Okay. Next, what we try to do, we try to look at the scaling functions which we had introduced in the earlier work also. So you see, as I told you, with gamma equal to 0.5, we could collapse the curves for the central part, not the ballistic parts. So this is shown for L max equal to 12 for two values of delta, which is delta equal to 0 and delta equal to 5.0. So you can see that although the scaling behavior is same, the distribution function looks very different if you change your delta value. Now, since we have a collapse, we can now try to find out what is this gz, what is the functional form of this scaling function. And my scaling variable is z equal to x by t to the power half. So what do we have here? We found that this gz has an interesting behavior. It has an exponential fall when z is less than z star, and it has a power law fall beyond that value up to a maximum value of z max. So here are the figures. So initially you can see that's an exponential fall, but the later it shows a power law behavior. But of course this is not true for all delta values. If delta is small, then this power law region is more prominent. As you change delta, then this power law region becomes less and less prominent. So therefore this z max depends on the value of delta, and this we call a crossover behavior, crossover from an exponential to a power law behavior. So not only it is not a Gaussian, but it has a very complicated kind of behavior. And these results, as I told you, are shown for L max equal to 12, but similar results are found for all values of L max. So now we have three parameters associated with this scaling function A, B, and C. And what we get from this, I'm being a little rapid through this, that this A, B, C, they show an interesting behavior that they become independent of L max above delta star. So the scaling function is universal above delta star. And the range divided by t has also the same behavior. And so what we note is that in this case you see that the scaling behavior, the scaling behavior, of course, of the second moment, that is x square average, is going as t to the power 3 by 2. So the walk has become slower, true, but the range has become larger because at every point I am allowing a larger length scale to cross by the walker. So although the walk has become slower, it is still possible to search remote targets because the range becomes larger. But when delta is increased, the range becomes smaller again, and it approaches the usual value √2 for the conventional quantum walk. So there is a region delta less than delta star. This delta star is around I think 4, where we found this behavior, and beyond this delta star also we found universal behavior. So this result is not very difficult to understand. If delta becomes very large, that means we have less probability of choosing very large time steps. So they are getting suppressed, and essentially we are getting things independent of L max. So L max is not mattering because the very large steps are not occurring with that high probability. So that is how we understand this result qualitatively, and this is one important aspect of this kind of a walk. So the rest of the time I'm going to, I wanted to go through this entanglement. As I told you, initially the state of the walker is expressed as a product state of the spatial part and the chiral part, and the entanglement is 0. But as time evolves, the coin and position states become entangled, and you can no longer always express it like that. And one can calculate the Neumann entropy of entanglement, which is defined through some mathematical relations, and that is what we computed. And what we noted that this is the original quantum walk in which you have a unique step length. This looks like this, and the entanglement is much higher than in case you have longer step length. So when you introduce some delta and so on, then you can see that the entanglement is increasing. Okay, so once again, this is a result in which we do not have a full understanding, but as I told you that there are many open questions in this problem. Okay, so let me go through quickly through some other works in which people have considered longer step lengths. So one work which was published immediately after our first work is by another Indian group in HRI, by Aditi, Ujjwal and their students. and they chose the step lengths from a Poissonian distribution, and other exponential distributions also truncated, and they also found the same behavior, that x square expectation value of that goes as e to the power 3/2. So one can claim that there is some kind of a universality. The random long-range quantum walks will have this exponent 3/2, although we have not been able to arrive at any analytical walk, because analytical walks are quite different for quantum cases, and here we also have randomness. So at least till now there is no analytical walk. And there may be other kinds of random long-range walks, but I'm just skipping this because that will take up some time, which is not necessary, and this is not so important. But I'll go through this now to the concept of quantum walks with memory. So once again, we cite the example of classical walk. What happens in a classical walk? In a classical walk, you can have a kind of memory in this way. The walker may remember the direction taken in the previous step and repeat it with some probability. This is called a persistent walk, and it is non-Markovian because it has memory. In quantum walk, you can have a similar concept, but in a different way. You can think of it in this way, that the path of the walk is determined by the positions of the previous two steps, and effectively the shift operator will now operate on 4 states instead of 2, because it has to take care of the 2 previous time steps. So we don't need to go through the details of this, and this is not the issue of discussion for the rest of the talk also. But what I want to emphasize is that this is a schematic picture in which, if you look at the probability, then this is the classical case, you see the Gaussian distribution, and if you have the quantum case, if you have ballistic peaks. But quantum walk with memory again gives you different behavior. You have localization. Okay, and then there is another very interesting walk which involves memory. We call it, people call it the elephantine walk. In a classical walk with elephantine memory, you have long-term memory. You remember all the steps taken in your previous time steps, and then your the time step which you are going to take at time t+1 will depend on all the previous time steps, and the probability can be expressed in a very compact and nice way, easily, simple way. But if you look at the quantum analog of the elephantine walk, then it becomes much more difficult because of this coin operator. You have the same kind of concept. You have some different step lengths. So here step length is varied. You have long-term memory. And the very interesting result is you get hyperballistic spread. The variance now behaves as TQ. Such hyperballistic spread is not unknown in quantum systems like interacting bosons or other kicked rotor systems. There are many systems, not many, but few systems. You can look up and make a search of hyperballistic spread, which looks like an anomaly, but this is what was found in the quantum elephant walk. Now, our walk, the one which we considered the quantum walk with memory, is much simpler once again. So, and it is basically motivated by the classical walk with memory, in which you remember the previous direction. In this case, you remember something else. What do we remember? So we take the walk in this manner. It can have different step lengths at each step, and it remembers the step length chosen in the preceding step, and with a certain probability p, which is independent of the previous steps, it will repeat the last step taken. And we have taken the simple case in which you have a binary step length, that is either 1 or 2. A step length is either 1 or 2, and we have used 2 schemes in this. This work was done in collaboration with Suchetana Mukhopadhyay, who was a student of Jadavpur University and came to do a project. It is in their syllabus, MSc syllabus dissertation actually, and this work then we continued, and this publication happened. She actually did a lot of work for this. Right. So let me tell you what was scheme 1. It is once again, as I told you, very simple. So at time t equal to 0, we choose a step length which is either 1 or 0 with equal probability. At time t greater than 0, LT will be equal to LT minus 1 with probability p. So we have one parameter p here. Otherwise, with probability 1 minus p, LT will be definitely not equal to LT minus 1. Okay. So this is the simple walk which we have taken. So in this case, you see that this implies that with 1 minus p probability, the walk is going to be anti-persistent. It is going to take the other state length. So that is what we call anti-persistent. Now let us consider some simple limits. In the limit p equal to 0, what does p equal to 0 means? P equal to 0 means that definitely it will pick up the other step length. So that means it is a possible sequence of steps as 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, etc. Now remember the model B in which we had a periodic sequence of step lengths just like this. So this must belong to the case of model B, a class of model B, and therefore we expect that x square should go as t square for p equal to 0. For p equal to 1, this limit is very simple. For p equal to 1, you just have a unique step length. It is deterministic, and therefore it is the usual quantum walk with the same kind of scaling once again. Now, if you take p equal to half, this means that you have equal probability of the two step lengths, and this result will correspond to the model A, in which we had this binary probability distribution and so on, where alpha has the value 0.5. And we have seen that in that case, x square scaled as t to the power 3 by 2. So we expect that for p equal to half, it should again be equal to t to the power 3 by 2. So let us look at the distributions first. So you see we have now different values of p, two particular values of p equal to 0.1 and 0.95. And once again what we have done, we have used two values of gamma to actually collapse the data. So the central part collapses quite nicely with gamma equal to 0.5. The ballistic peaks now once again collapses when gamma is chosen to be equal to 1. So these features you see are not at all affected by the memory factor. Then what is affected? What is affected will be clear the moment we are plotting the moments. If you are plotting the moments, you see that there is an interesting variation. So for p equal to 0, we know that it should be t square. So x should be t and x square should be t square. But see, if you choose a very small value of p, say p equal to 0.005, the red curve, then you see that initially it has a faster variation, but then it is almost taking a constant value. Similarly, x square, expectation value of that, the same color again, red, you see that initially it is faster, almost like t square, but then it goes like this, it shows deviation from the t square behavior. And this is t, and this is, sorry, t to the power 1.5 is shown and t is shown. Okay, but this one seems to be more close to t to the power 1, this red one. While the other one, if you take a larger value of p, then you can see it is more compatible with t to the power 1.5, the exponent we found earlier. So there's something interesting happening at p close to 0. It is initially, it has a fast growth, but it later becomes much slow. Okay. And therefore, we conclude that the asymptotic variation is significantly dependent on p. So let us look at the p going to 0 region more closely. If I do that, we plot this x square now as a function of t once again, and for various values of p which are very close to 0. So one is exactly p equal to 0, which should show the t square behavior. The other ones are very close to 0, and you can see that up to a certain point it is showing t square behavior, but then it is starting to show starting to show deviations from this behavior. And this deviation occurs at larger values of time as p approaches 0. Okay. So now we show in this figure, this is the same figure we had shown earlier. Now it is plotted in the inset. And now we see that for p going to 0, with these curves, one can now have a scaling behavior. How? If we plot this x square expectation value divided by t square against the scaling variable z equal to pt, so z is equal to pt here, then we find that except for a transient behavior for very small values of t, it shows an excellent collapse. Okay, and we therefore claim that this x square average, this will vary as t square into some function of this variable pt. And calling this pt equal to z, we note that this scaling function f is fairly a constant here, and then it falls, and one can fit this region beyond z equal to 1 to a behavior like this, and the fitting function is like this, and so the fitting parameters are like this: 1.7 for alpha, beta is 0.2, and mu is close to 1. Okay. So now, if you now use this thing, then you see that if use this result in here, then you see that your x square essentially varies as t square divided by this asymptotically, which means that the asymptotic variation should be x square expectation value as t. Now, not t square, not t to the power 1.5, but t. And there is a crossover behavior. You can see that up to z equal to 1, it has one behavior, and the behavior changes beyond z equal to over p. Okay, so as I told you that approach p equal to 0, the deviations will occur at larger and larger time. This is consistent with this behavior, that the time scale diverges as we approach p equal to 0, because p equal to 0 there is only one scaling behavior. Show this scaling, this part. So this is something very interesting and very something we see that the same kind of this behavior will find close to p equal to 1, and I'm just keeping this. So let us look at this figure now. Okay, let us look at this slide now. So here we asked a question that what happens at intermediate p values. Okay. So we found that in the scaling behavior for x going to 0, x going very close to 0, we had found that x square by t square. Focus our attention on exponent, which is extracted from this fitting. So look at this curve, the red dots. So you see, as I told you, at p equal to 0 and 1, it has to be equal to 2. But when we are very close to 0, then it immediately drops from 2 to 1. So it is discontinuous at this point. This is a very unusual kind of a discontinuity. And then it starts increasing again. And finally, we know that at p equal to half, it should be, nu should be equal to 1.5. So that value is obtained there. But actually, this value is obtained beyond a value of PC, p equal to PC, some kind of loosely saying critical value, which is equal to 1/3, after which we find that it again becomes 3/2, and then it again jumps to this value 2 at p equal to 1. So this is a very unusual and surprising behavior which we obtain from the values of nu. Okay, and throughout we have, therefore, this part is of course super diffusive but subballistic. So this point is diffusive, and beyond that we go to super diffusive but subballistic variation. So this scheme 2, I think I'm running short of time. So scheme 2 is very similar, but it has two parameters associated with it. So as usual, at t equal to 0, LT is either 1 or 2 with equal probability. At larger times, LT is equal to the previous time length with probability p. Yes, now this is different. With probability 1 minus p, LT is random. So LT is either 1 or 2, and another probability appears here, which is q. But again, there are some limits for which it will be easy to guess what will be the behavior. As usual, p equal to 0, it is effectively a quantum walk with usual behavior with two step lengths with probability q and 1 minus q. So this is nothing but the model A with alpha equal to q. So x square should scale as t to the power 3/2, except for q equal to 0 and 1. And p equal to 0, q equal to 0 or 1 gives me back the usual ballistic behavior, which is this. So these two things we can easily guess. We can also guess one more thing. See, if we take the effective persistence probability p prime, in this case it is p plus q into 1 minus p, or p plus 1 minus q into 1 minus p, depending on whether I choose a 1 or 2 in the case when p is the previous step is not repeated. Okay, and as usual, the anti-persistence is this. So if I take q equal to 0.5, then these two expressions are same, and the persistence probability turns out to be this. And this result should correspond to those obtained for a persistence probability P prime in scheme 1. But in scheme 1, we had seen that beyond PC equal to 1/3, the exponent is always 3 by 2. So we expect that for any value of P here, the exponent should be equal to 3 by 2. Similarly, even when Q is not equal to 0.5, on an average, the persistence probability has the same expression. So we expect that it will be 3 by 2. So the moments are plotted here, and the scaling, they are fitted to the expected asymptotic behavior, that is t square and t to the power 3 by 2. And here, therefore, for scheme 2, the scheme 2, we have shown several values, say q equal to 0.25 and with two values of q, 0.25 and 0.5, and we see that they coincide. So this conjecture that for any value of q, ultimately it will coincide with scheme 1, we are getting that. So scheme 2 actually doesn't give us anything new, except for this region where scheme 1 for p less than 1/3, where scheme 1 had unusual behavior, and scheme 2 gives us 3 by 2 all through as expected from these arguments. Okay. And finally, this is the last but one slide before conclusion. We have computed the entanglements once again, and we note that entanglement also is not really affected by the memory factor, and it looks very similar to what we had in model A or B. And for scheme 2, of course, everything coincides, different values of q's, we have the same thing happening, p and q, so they coincide, whereas in scheme 1, things depend on p to some extent. So that essentially are all the results which I am reporting today. And as I told you, that there are scope of doing a lot of things, and of course analytical calculations are most welcome. But the problem is, as I told you, that the unitary transformation ut can no longer be expressed as u to the power t. That poses a problem in these kinds of things, because that is the tool which we use in the usual quantum walk when analytical things are done. So let me come to the concluding slide. So basically, as I told you, quantum walks always gives us some surprises. So here the surprising results are, we have subballistic but super diffusive scaling. This scaling has not been noted before. We and of course HRI group, they noted this for different behavior, for different kinds of distributions. So we call it a universal exponent. And we note some interesting crossover behavior. We note that remote search is possible for the fat tail distribution on the walk, although the walk slows down. So there can be some important application of this kind of walk also. And with memory, we find some non-universal exponent in scheme 1, and an interesting discontinuity which is non-intuitive. We don't have any idea why that is occurring. And we found that distributions have the same kind of behavior with the scaling variable x by t to the power half, irrespective of memory effects. And finally, as I showed you, that the entanglement is also enhanced, but it doesn't give us any significant effect of memory. And as I told you, there are a lot of things to do and study and understand still. It's a fairly new topic, and it will be very nice if you people, I think there are some students who can be interested and think of doing something here. Acknowledgements are due to SERB project, ongoing SERB project, and Charles Bennett for suggestions. Actually, it is regarding that model B. He suggested that why don't you look at the model in which there is no randomness, but there are variable step lengths. So I'm grateful to him. And finally, thank you for your kind attention.
So thank you, Professor Sen, for such a nice talk. And now it's time for question and answer.
Yeah.
I have one remark that that you showed the increase in the diffusion in case of the quantum walk. Generally, we see such kind of things in non-equilibrium system, like in turbulent case, we see this kind of increase in diffusion, and this x square varies as TQ. That we also saw.
I know, right.
Yeah. So there we understand. Yeah, there we understand the increase in that diffusion through some sort of non-linearity. So here, how can we basically, as a layman, we can relate those increase in diffusion with something in quantum system?
Increase in diffusion, as I told you, because basically of okay. So let me tell you the first part of the talk where I told you that these interference effects are actually responsible for the ballistic behavior, right? And if you consider this kind of a walk which I did, see your step. Let's just take the simplest example. You have 1 or 2. And if you just compute by hand that what is going to be the time evolution, you can easily see that the interference effect is going to be become less now, because the step lengths are different. Therefore, what is happening that in that case, what happened is, may I show you the initial slides? Then I think it will be easier to follow. So there we found the time evolution. Actually, what is happening? Okay. Right here. So you found that here what is happening at step 0, it is time step 0, it is at the origin. Time step 1, it is at 1 or it is at -1. But at step 2, you see that contributions are coming from both these to this origin. But if my step lengths are different in different times, then you see that this interference effect is going to be less. Am I clear?
So yeah. So new states are coming into the system.
New states are coming in the picture, so the old states are not getting disturbed.
I see. Okay. Because same behavior we get as an effect of nonlinearity in turbulence also.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Any other question from students?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, Minal,
yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am, can you please go to the slide of entropy of disorder system?
It is just a little bit slow because the figures, I think, are a little bit heavy, and therefore it is a little bit slow. Let me go. Okay. This one?
No, there is one more picture there.
You said entanglement, isn't it? I have very few slides on entanglement, only 2. This one and the last one.
This one, fine.
This one? Okay.
Yes, it's fine. Ma'am, I want to know about the Lmax. When delta is equal to 0, there should be the oscillation, right?
These are, yes, these oscillations are coming, yes.
But for Lmax is equal to 6, but there is direct sharp transition, means there is not.
See, you cannot see the oscillations because of the resolution factor. The oscillations are still there.
Okay, now I want to know why when Lmax is 1, this is entanglement will compared to the when delta is equal to 0, it is should be higher than, right?
When delta is equal to 0?
Delta is equal to 0 and delta is equal to
Lmax equal to 1 means essentially, if you look at the definition of delta equal to 0 means you still have the power law distribution, because I took it as a 1 minus L to the power minus 1 plus delta. It doesn't mean that the power law distribution is not there. Okay, so only this one doesn't have the power law distribution. This is no distribution actually. It's a unique step. All these have distribution. Sorry, my notation is like that. Okay.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Actually, it is because in condensed matter physics we use the d minus something. So the d equal to 1 here, so I put that 1 there. So just using that kind of a notation. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other question? Yeah, Saurabh.
Have you looked at the average velocities as well?
Yes.
Have you looked at the average velocities, v square?
Average velocities will be, you can easily get, but right now I am not sure.
Okay.
You can easily compute. Yeah. It can be done.
Yeah, I mean.
But what do you actually want to know from the average velocities? Because if you just scale by the time, then you get the velocities, isn't it?
No, I wanted the v square average too, because you had a trouble with this 3/2.
Oh, okay.
Intermediate to 1 and 2.
Okay, so you do dx dt and then do those things. Okay, right. No, we haven't done that. But of course, it is doable. Yeah. Thank you for this question.
Okay. And The other thing is that this is probably beyond the scope of this talk. Neither I know much about it. Does that crossover does it have anything to do with, how would it, suppose all these things are really relevant for quantum computation, which they are. And how would this crossover affect quantum computation, all these, things that we talk about there? So you have a crossover that you have seen.
Yes, I don't have a ready-made answer to that. I think one should think about it. I really don't know, because I didn't think of application part yet. We were, as I told you, just looking at some basic things like basically the scaling behavior. That is what we were interested in, and under different factors like memory and step length increase and so on. And obviously with that comes the probability distribution. So essentially we looked at three things: the scaling, distribution, and the entanglement. And the application part, no, we have not done. So I'm not really able to give you a ready-made answer to that. But I'll think about it. Definitely.
But this is definitely a very sort of elaborate work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
A lot of things you have said.
Maybe I have gone too fast, but because you see these papers,
not fast, but
they are connected. No, I had to go through the first part, because otherwise you wouldn't have followed. But I skipped certain parts because they were not so relevant. But this group, this Molfetta, the quantum elephant, they have really done lots of work, and actually they have obtained the analytical expression for their work. What they did is actually cleverly use a probability for that memory, so that you can do things analytically. But still, I should not demean them. The analytical part is quite involved. Okay, so that they also obtain a localized work, but localization is happening. But when you look at the variance, then it is behaving like t to the power 3. So that is very interesting, I found. And they are still doing a lot of work on that. We are slow people, do something now and then, but they, they just go on producing papers and papers after that. So they have been doing a lot of work. But this is a good, I think, a new topic for students to, if they want to explore this field, then a lot of open questions are there.
See, the entangled state, which I sort of thought that they would come in as the time progresses, and so this is the key to the quantum computation, or say, for example, computation. So
and here I have shown you just one kind of entanglement measure. There are several. So people have done those things also, and they also give some interesting results. And another thing you can do is that I have, there is various things you can do. You can change your coin, or this Hadamard coin actually is defined in terms of two angles, theta and phi. Phi is introduces a phase factor, and theta is the angle which here it is pi by 2. So therefore I had a nice rotation by pi by 2. Then that is the matrix you get for the Hadamard coin. But you can vary that also, and the work will depend on that. So those things can be done also. They also give you interesting results.
Okay. Any other question, remark, comments?
So let me leave the presentation for now. Okay. And thank you very much once again for attending this. And Jimmy didn't create any problem, at least.
Yeah.
For you or for me or for anyone.
But a comment. Paragama, it was a nice talk and good piece of work.
Thank you, Shitangshu. Nice to see you virtually. Let's hope we will meet. I like your campus, so let's hope we can meet again in your campus one day. Not in too distant future. Let's hope. Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks, Pankaj.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay, and everyone else for coming. Okay. So may I leave now?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you, Professor Sen, for such a nice talk. Okay, see you. Bye.